Hello, everybody. I'm Russell Steinberg, Rusty Steinberg, and before we get this celebration of my mom's life going on, I wanted to just show you some of the displays and everything we've done to show you just all the directions in which she manifested her creativity. So let me start here with a display of all her writing, which we put together. It really gives you a sense of just the breadth of everything she did. So here is her first novel, The Baja Road, which was a kind of a really cool mystery romance that had to do with a journey down the Baja Peninsula. And just before that was actually the first book she wrote. This book here, The Littlest Knight. She not only wrote this wonderful children's story, but she illustrated it. Let me just show you, give you a sense of how wonderful this is. So you can see the beautiful illustrations. And it's about a knight who's too short to be considered worthy of being a knight. And so he uses his brains to overcome all the challenges they give him. Here they are trying to come up with a challenge that will be impossible for him, to go across the moat in a full suit of armor when he's so small. So he has the blacksmith fashion the armor into a submarine, and there he is with the submarine crossing the moat with a turtle holding the fish as bait. It's so funny. And when they congratulate him at the end, you can see the turtle gets the fish. It was really a pleasure to rediscover this children's story and put it out. So here we have all her plays. So it's a little dark in here, but here's Bait, which is actually was done several times, actually one act play. And then below that, here's the Attitude, which is her full-length play, 2 acts, 2 full acts, such as she always billed it was Sex in the City meets the Golden Girls. And we had 2 wonderful readings of that one. And then one that's going to be read 3 times this in October here is The Happiness of Clams, a 1-act play that she just recently revived. And we're really excited to see that. It's just so sad that she wasn't able to live to be able to see that. She's really looking forward to it. Then we have just all these incredible screenplays. There's Time Surfer, there's Bitch, which is about a dog, of course. My mom loved dogs, and we owned them all growing up, and even afterwards, she had so many lovely dogs. You Are What You Eat was actually a short comedy that won the UCLA prize that year for short films. I actually scored that one. It was really great. We actually shot that, or my mom shot that at the house. And it was just amazing to have an entire film crew here transforming this place into a set. And we have Saving Paradise. Saving Paradise was about my mom's love for the environment and dealt with saving the trees, Making a Hit, which was her comedy assassin thing with her hitman Sheldon, of course, Dying to Get Married, another comedy, Carried Away, another comedy. Curses, my favorite of her comedies, which was this wild thing that dealt with all kinds of witchcraft and the power for the good witches in one house came from a pickle jar, which had the soul of their Aunt Dora, and that's where their power came from. The secret in this pickle jar, such a Jewish thing. And of course, it's so funny because my mom loved to make pickles. Our relatives did that all the time, and we did have an Aunt Dora, so that was a really funny in joke. Wonderful fantasy comedy. And I remember when she wrote it, I was very critical at the time because I say, Mom, this was just full of such fantasy. People were realistic now. We'll never go for this. She was 5 years ahead of the time because now, of course, every film has fantastical ideas. And then she wrote horrors as well, horror films. And this was Skin, really scary screenplay that dealt with our quest always to be beautiful, and dealt with young women who go to a plastic surgeon and just horrible things come from that. And she was actually working before she died on another horror screenplay called Slime, and I found all kinds of research she had done conversing with bacteriologist, which was really interesting. So that's a lot of her of her writing, and there, you know, there's also short stories and monologues, but it's impressive just seeing all this together. But before my mom became a writer, she was a fashion designer, and quite an impressive fashion designer. I found several newspaper ads of her dresses that were in Robinson's and May Company and other places, and they appeared in major designers at the time in the 50s, like Betty Lou. So this was one of hers. This is a wonderful sketch she made. And here I found this picture that appeared, and this is my mom modeling her fashions. There she is on the right-hand side. And one of my cousins, as a young girl here, Marcy, is there, and then her best friend, Marcia, is on the left. And so this wonderful photo was another great discovery. Here's some more of her dresses with this designer, Betty Lou. And then when the story was when she was actually approached by Ruth Handler and worked for her at Mattel for a very short time, just when Ruth had designed the Barbie doll, and Ruth needed dresses for the Barbie doll. So she turned to my mom for that. And she did that for a few months until my dad didn't want her to continue, because she was never home, and she's trying to raise children and earning more money than she did. So that put kind of the quash to that. And that was the end of her fashion career. Had she continued, she probably would have been something major. So then her creativity went into our school PTA, and she started putting on shows. So this is my mom singing in one of her shows. She did these parody musicals where she would take Hair, the music of Hair, or music of Fiddler on the Roof, and she would compose her own lyrics to that, and they were all choreographed and produced, and had a separate story that was all comical. And so here's a postcard from Harrier right here. And here I'm going to take you to see Chicken Soup. Here was the program for Chicken Soup. And you can see here, written and directed by Sandi Steinberg, but she had choreographers, stage consultant, music, of course, and costumes and productions. I mean, these were huge productions that my mom had going in the PTA, and they made a lot of money, and they got a lot of attention in many performances. Here's a poster where all the cast signed of Chicken Soup. You can see my mom rehearsing there, really serious with glasses. I remember Hyla Atchison was the pianist, kind of cracked me up. And there she is with her producer on the bottom. So she did a lot of those, did 4 of those. And then she became very serious about writing and everything. And then we have, for displays here, we also have a lot of pictures of my mom for display, graduation. There she is, Mom. And, as she kept going writing, she started to become more interested in all aspects of film, and she loved to act. She took acting classes and really excelled in it. She actually acted in several plays. And of course, as you read my thing, in this cult horror film, The Millennium Bug. But she also played a very serious role in a play called The Shadow Box, where she played an older woman approaching mortality in a wheelchair. And it was very dramatic and wonderful. Here's some other pictures. There she is with me, I guess as a baby. That gives you a sense of her personality and her smile. There she is with my younger brother. There's all my brothers together on top. Here she is with her dear friend Amy, who has adopted her dog Barley. And Amy was just an incredible friend all through the pandemic. And these are all out of order. Here's my mother and father dating. So this must have been in the mid 1950s. And there with another one of my brothers. Here she is, really beautiful picture of her as a young girl, and even younger. And then a little older. And I even discovered some pretty sexy pictures of my mom in bathing suits. She had a great figure. Here, some more, just to give you some ideas, of pictures of her. See her there with one of our first dogs. That's a picture of her current dog, Barley, and who really was just a great, great comfort. Sweet, sweet dog. And picture of her at her graduation. picture of her singing. She also loved to sing. She had a wonderful contralto, and at the time she was taking acting lessons. She also took voice lessons. And I went to several cabarets where I got to hear her sing jazz standards, and she was really quite good. Here's some family pictures. There she is with her half-sister, my Aunt Muriel. And there she is with Muriel's daughter, Audrey. The two of them were very close. In fact, this is a wonderful picture of, like, I don't know, was it 1, 2, 3, 4, 4.5 generations or something like that. Seated is my grandmother. And then just behind her on the far left is my mom's half-sister, Muriel again, and then my mom, and then Muriel's daughter, Audrey, and then Audrey's daughter, Carrie. And now Carrie has had 2 children as well, Lily and Sophie. So here's another really cute picture of my mom as a young girl. Here is something else I'll finish with. My mom also did wonderful tapestries. This is just a photograph of a very large tapestry that she did that was, I think, went into a doctor's office. And then when I was very young, she created these very original hand puppets. See the alligator and the elephant. God, I just love these. One of them, I just wouldn't take off my hand. You see, I loved all the dinosaurs and the snakes. You see the dinosaurs here, and there's in the back here's an octopus kind of hidden. You know, the designs were fantastic. So this was a big part of my mom's creativity. So I wanted to just give you a sense of all the incredible things she did before we go back and start the celebration. Before we go outside and start this wonderful celebration of my mom, I wanted to start with some music, and I'd like to play 2 pieces. And the first piece is something I've just completed. It's the first piece of a suite. It's going to be called the American Suite, and of course it's dedicated in memory to my mom, Sandi Steinberg. The spirit that I'm feeling with about my mom right now. I want to play one more piece before we go outside, and My mom was one of the, really encouraged music, and she herself was such a marvelous singer. In fact, this is the piano I grew up playing. And I still remember the first piece that she played when we were kids. I don't know if you remember this, Michael. First piece on Pink Elephants, she told me it was called. Probably from the 50s. And I remember it was just so much fun watching her play. I thought, how am I ever going to learn piano to do something like that? I want to play one more piece, and this is a piece just a beautiful piece of music by Franz Schubert. Schubert himself had such a short life. He only lived to be 31, and yet he produced in those years music, volume of music equal to anyone who's had a long life. And what I love about Schubert's music, and my mom loved it too, is that he was the greatest songwriter of all time, the greatest melodist, and yet also his music was filled with such light and dark. And that's kind of the feeling that I'm hoping we'll conjure today, this feeling, this preciousness of our lives here, but also the knowledge of what a fragile thing it is, this line between life and death held together with love. And this piece is an impromptu in A flat. It just really expresses that. You'll see it starts very dark and then gets very warm. feel that's a heartful way to begin. Let's all go outside, and then we're going to all do something special, and then you're gonna hear from a lot of people. Okay, thank you.
Are you filming?
I'm filming. We're broadcasting on Zoom.
Does everyone have a butterfly?
Ellie, you've got your butterfly?
Yes. So you might be smacking it.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Thinking about it.
They don't want to leave. They're not moving yet. They didn't warm up enough.
They didn't warm up enough. They need, they're starting to go. They're starting to go. They're just trying to get their wings a little bit warmer.
They're not moving yet.
Dana says, just like Sandy, they don't want to leave. I think that's very true. I see them going.
Watch out.
I see them going.
There goes one. Look, yay!
Okay, as the butterflies are starting to warm up, we're going to warm up too. So you guys, you all know me. I'm Rusty or Russell. I'm Sandy's oldest son. I will be emceeing this. We're going to hear from a lot of wonderful people today. And I think we are all going to learn things about my mom we didn't know. Because I'll tell you, the last month was especially hard. And it took me a while to call people. But once I did, I just couldn't believe the outpouring. It wasn't just stories. My mom was this really fantastic spirit. She got people to just feel good about themselves. And that, I started to realize this is such a much bigger thing than my mourning and even my family. She touched so many people's lives. And I think this is going to all become apparent as people get up and talk a little bit about her. And I'll talk about later. I also have a bunch of things to read from people who couldn't attend, who are on Zoom now. We have people from Chicago, people from Minnesota, people from San Antonio, from all over the country, and who are still struggling probably to hear my audio. So I want to first introduce one of my mom's closest friends and someone who got us through this entire last couple of years through the pandemic, and is now the proud adopted owner of my mom's beloved dog, Barley, Amy Winston. Could you all please welcome Amy to...
I don't want to step on anybody. I'm watching.
Rowan, keep Barley.
I think somebody has to take Barley. Pick him up, because he wants the butterflies.
Yeah. Come on up, Amy.
If I smash a butterfly, that's not good. All right. I probably don't need this because I'm very loud. Whoops. I know I haven't met a lot of you before, but I've heard about most all of you because during the pandemic, Sandy and I would take long walks with Barley. Once we got Barley, we went to she was like, I want another dog, and people were like, you're too old to have another dog. And I'm like, no, we'll go get you another dog. So we went to the West Valley shelter and adopted Barley, and he was her constant companion. And it was so important, especially during the pandemic when, she couldn't get out a lot. And Sandy. Sandy was probably one of the most dynamic, doer, goer, loved music, loved art, loved writing. What in her latter years became a good actress as well. She's done so many things. I always call her like a Renaissance woman. And one of the things she was most proud of were her 4 boys. And we would talk nonstop about them, mostly good, guys, mostly good. But she was beyond proud of them. She would tell me everything about their lives, even though I pretend I didn't hear any of it. So I know a lot. But she truly was amazing and was continuing to write up until she got very ill. I mean, she has... When you go in there, you'll have to look at some of the plays, and you see on there, there's a short play that's going to be done at Fierce Backbone, and you guys will all have to come. It's wonderful. But she became one of my closest friends, and I said she always said, "You're my daughter," since I didn't get one. So, but she also very much fell in love with Dana. And loved Heather, and all the food that you're eating is Heather, Rick's girlfriend / wife, I'll call her, did all of the food, so it was really amazing. But I'm honored to be able to take Sandy's 5th son, Barley, my family. We adopted him, but he will always be Barley Steinberg. And it still hasn't hit me, as I'm sure it hasn't you, because Sandy was such a vibrant force of nature that she's gone. And being here, I still feel her spirit, and I know, because she loved a good show, that she is somewhere here with us watching, and is so happy to see all of you here. And like I said, she couldn't have told more stories about how rich her life was with her friends and her family, and it is an honor to be here, and it's an honor to be an honorary sister. And they will have rights, custody rights, where you will get to see
visitation.
them. Visitation rights. Thanks. But this is a beautiful event, and I know there's so many people that have so many amazing stories to tell about Sandy. I can't even pull one out of that is extra special. All I know is that she lived her life fully. I mean, 89 years, and she was still raring to go and still had more things she wanted to do. But she did so much, and I'm just so honored to call her my friend, and to have this family be part of my family and my family's family. So, and love meeting all of you, and I hope to get to know you better and hear stories about Sandy from before I knew her. Because did you know that I live right up the street, and about 10 years ago I was in a writing group, and there was this lovely woman, Sandy, and I was like, oh, she's so interesting, and she's such a talented writer. And we were talking, she's like, where do you live? I'm like, I live on Boris Drive. And she's like, I live on Boris Drive. She goes, I've lived there for 50 some odd years. And I was like, what? And then we found out it was like it was kismet. It was meant to be. And I miss her, but her spirit is living on in all of you, and especially in her boys, who she just said, I love them so much, and I hope they continue to be together and hold themselves up when she's not here. So anyway, thank you all.
Thank you, Amy.
Rest in peace, my dear friend.
1 second, Amy.
Yeah.
Stay there. Yeah, you guys are definitely family, all of you Winstons. I just want to tell you, my mom had I think that was one of the powerful things. She was pretty much in denial of dying at all, and I certainly took that on with her as we fought this whole year. But I found, when I did find her will and everything after she died, there was one note in it, and the note was dated October 26th, and that was right after her diagnosis with lung cancer. And it just says in 3 lines, I, Sandra Steinberg, being of sound of mind, leave upon my death my sweet dog Barley, to my dear and loving friends Amy Smallman Winston and Matt Winston, where he will be loved and taken care of for the rest of his life. So I wanted to give you
Oh,
this too.
it's almost too much. Oh,
It's beautiful.
it's
beautiful.
so great. It's so great. And that was another thing. She loved that I rescue dogs. She was always like, send me their pictures. I'm going to send them to all my friends because we've got to get them home. She was such an advocate of nature and animals, and she got me writing political postcards. I never did that before. But you can't say no to Sandy. So anyway, and I'll continue to do that in her honor.
Yeah.
Thank
Watch
you.
out for the butterfly. Butterfly.
This is
Serpentine.
this is like Twister with like emotional consequences.
Amy, thank you so much.
Oh, you're
For
welcome.
my heart, it's beautiful. Rhea, are you here?
I am.
Yes, please.
Watch the butterflies.
Yeah, just have to
I
watch.
see it right here.
It's my mom's spirit just refusing to.
Hi. I was invited, or as we all were, to say something about a story or something we had to say regarding Sandy. And I have had this story in mind for many years. Okay, first of all, my name's Rhea Markinson. And my story is about how Sandy helped me realize a childhood fascination and interest that followed me into my adulthood. First of all, let me begin by saying Sandy and I had met many times over the years due to one of my very, very best friends, Audrey Sandler. Sandy was her aunt, and may Audrey rest in peace. Sandy was Audrey's aunt, and at various family and friend gatherings, we would be with one another and always find something to talk about. But our real friendship began with a hair appointment, probably around 1994 or thereabouts. I'm sitting in the chair at the hair salon, having my hair cut, when I overhear a woman sitting in the chair next to me discussing the fact that she cannot seem to find someone to handle the props for a student film she's written at UCLA. Behind the scenes, props. That is my fascination. That was my imagination. I've always wanted to be and know what was going on behind the scenes. So, okay. I was more interested in what's going on behind the actual movie itself, and on many occasions I would be visualizing what was going on instead of actually watching the movie. I turned to her and mentioned that I had overheard what she was saying. She turned to me, and voila, we recognized each other. I told her I would love to help her, and if she'd let me, I would be her prop lady for the film. My dream come true. Well, that is the beginning of our real friendship. What an experience she allowed me to have. I learned how and where to get props. And did you know that props are the items handled by the actors, and everything else on the set is the set director's purview? I had no idea about that, but it's a learning experience. I was so excited. I'm finally behind the scenes, watching with great interest and awe at how movies can be made, all due to Sandy. Following working on Sandy's movie, I was invited to work on another student film for a USC student by the people I'd met working on Sandy's film. Both films offered different experiences. It may sound so trite, but I truly felt my fascination and imagination and interest in the behind the scenes of movie making had been met. It got off my bucket list. And again, all because of Sandy's belief in me. One more thing that Sandy has given me. If you Google me, you will find that I am, I guess, considered a professional shopper, as the word shopper is what is next to my name. And I'm sure that's something all women hope to be, aspire to be. After the films were done, we continued to see one another. One day we decided to go to lunch and shopping together to the mall. We were so in tune with one another that we ended up buying the same black sweater that we both loved and wore often. I still have mine hanging in the closet, and I can't help but remember Sandi every time I view it. Sandi was such a strong, talented, free spirit. I know that she will be missed by so many people that she has touched and inspired in some way or another during her lifetime. She was a wonderful woman and is a woman who cannot be forgotten. Thank you for listening.
All right, thank you so much, Rhea. Yeah, sure. Well, no, it's okay. Thank you so much. Okay. Yeah, I really appreciate all of these recollections. I'm going to share some stuff as we go on, but especially the last couple of years in my mom's life, I got to discover many things about her I didn't know. And when Amy mentioned the fact that she had to write postcards, my mom had really strong liberal causes, and I didn't know this, but when I guess I must have been very young, she had just gone away with some girlfriends on a trip, and she only told me in the last few years she had said that to my dad because she would have been furious what she was doing. What she had done was she got on a bus to Berkeley to protest the Vietnam War. And they were cracking skulls, and so she went, because she knew it was the right thing to do, so she went up there. But it's amazing, she never told us about it. No, she was just with some girls. Things like that. And there's a lot of these kinds of gems we're going to hear about next. Is my brother Rick here? Rick. Yeah, Rick, why don't you come
Look
up
out
and
for
talk?
butterflies.
Okay.
Mine's not looking too
Look
good.
out for butterflies.
Look at my brother, the butterfly whisperer.
Don't go in the pool.
Hey, just talking to them.
Hi, I'm Rick. I'm Sandy's youngest son. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, so I guess it's never really a good time to get up here. Kind of caught off guard.
Sorry.
Thank you guys all for coming. I appreciate it. It's an incredible production Rusty put on, and I thank everybody who helped me set this whole thing up for my mom. So what it was like with my mom, let me think about this for a minute. So what it was like with my mom is my mom was totally awesome. My mom was a kind, loving, generous person. My mother always protected me, always looked after me. She was always there for me, and she was just an incredible woman. From a very, very young age, my mother had always pushed me into my interests, whatever my interests were. So there was amazing things she introduced me to. She introduced me to painting. She introduced me to pottery. She introduced me to archaeology and rock tumbling and all these incredible things she taught me. She was just totally outstanding. I mean, I lucked out with my mom. There was a time in my life that was very, very difficult a long time ago, and it just happened to be that, you know, my mom was there for me. My mom was there for me so many times I can't even count. But my mom was there for me this one particular time, a very long time ago, in my darkest hour, and my mom was that guiding light. My mom pointed me in the right direction, and I'm only here today in front of you because of my mom, actually. And that's how important she was to me in my life. I'm really pissed off she's gone. It's difficult. It's really difficult because I just don't want to lose her.
Yeah.
But besides that, you know, my mom, she always lit up her room. You know, my mom always had her own opinion on things. My mom was always super talented. You know, from designing clothes to making me hand puppets to everything we did when I was growing up, you know, she excelled in, my mom. And, you know, you get up here and I'm thinking, God, what am I going to say about this, right? You know what I mean? It's just that it's really impossible to put into words. You know, my mother, I just really lucked out in the mother department. You know, I'll leave you with this. Not having her in my life is a huge hole. She was an incredibly special woman, and I'm gonna miss her. I'm really gonna miss her. I think that's all I gotta say. Thank you.
All this beautiful landscaping here today in the house, in fact, taking care of so much of the house, is all due to my brother Rick and his girlfriend Heather. And we are so appreciative, Rick, of everything you did for Mom. And she's definitely, you did it correct. You did it correct. Ricky was also the person who reminded me, right, that Mom split an arrow from 100 yards. Yeah. My mother was an archer early on because my dad was an archer. Except it turned out my mom was like really one of the best archers. And so she told this story. She actually split, was it Dad's arrow or someone's arrow? She split from 100 yards away.
In a competition. And
it was in a competition.
Yeah.
So she was an expert archer. What stopped her career in archery is when people started, this group she was with, they started using it for hunting. She didn't want to kill anything. So that was the end of her archery days, right? Yeah, Ricky reminded me of that great story. Also, I just want to say, before I call up my brother Michael too, is that Rick and Andy and Michael and my girlfriend Dana and Heather were just did the hard work this whole year, being there every day. Amy too, you know, we would have this, we had this routine. Mom, are you ready to go to the doctors? So, well, you know, Barley, he's a pandemic dog. He can't be left alone in the house, so there's no house left. So we'd take it to Amy or Matt up the street, and so that we always relate to these appointments because I never allowed enough time, you know, for the transfer. Then we'd do the texting, get Barley to your house, and then we'd go schlepping away. And I know Andy did all of that too. It was really important part of this. So I just have such a warm feeling for just how my brothers all worked together to make sure Mom could live here in the house this whole year independently in the place she loved to be in, loved to work in, and with her writing desk and just doing everything she wanted, being with Barley. So it was great. Mike, why don't you come up and say a few words?
I'm Michael. I wrote a few things down and don't really know what to say, but anyway, I'd just like to thank everybody for coming, and while life's never going to be the same, I'm so used to my mom being around. Taking out the trash, going to Trader Joe's, sweeping up her patios, watering. I'm going to really miss her, and thanks for coming. I'm looking forward to listening to all the great things everybody says about her. And yeah, it's just really hard. I don't know, you know, I don't know what I'm going to do. It's just going to be rough trying to adjust to this. I don't know how to do it.
Mike, it meant so much to Mom, all the things that you did do for her. You know, all the things you took care of around the house. And please know that. She told me that all the time. Andy, would you like to come up?
Hey everybody, thank you all for coming. I'm Andy, otherwise known as Sandy's number 3 son. That's how she would always introduce me. You know, I wrote some remarks I take after my mom. I didn't know if I could actually remember what I was going to say, so I made sure to write them down. But before I launch into that, I do want to just take a second and say, circle back to something Amy has said, and you just said, Rusty. I arrived here at 2 p.m. today and saw this house looking the way it does now, and I was blown away. This is not the work of a professional caterer. This is not the work of a crew. This is my family that did this. They made the food. Heather made the food. Rusty and Rick and Mike and Dana and our family friend Chris. I hope I'm not leaving anybody out. Have been working their butts off. Tim, hello Tim. Have been working their butts off to create this. And you know, here's another reason I wanted to mention it though. Not just because I want to acknowledge it, because it's important that I acknowledge it, but also because they have created something of great beauty. There is no question about that, and I feel my mother's presence here. Beauty is something that's very important to her. And you have honored her very well by creating what you've done. If she could have been here herself, this is what she would have wanted to see. So, if ever there was one of those no way I can sum this up in a 5-minute speech moments, this would be it. What I can say is I feel blessed. When I think back on everything my mom did to raise me and my brothers, I'm actually in awe of it. Everybody who knows my mom knows what a bright light she is. What you may not know is she didn't just read children's books to us, she wrote a really good one for us. She didn't just buy us toys, she made some of them, and she even made our Halloween costumes. She was a very talented designer, and she cooked for 6 people every single day. Ironically, she became superb with her meals after we kids were raised. But we still got to enjoy that later in life. Also, despite having a modest family budget, she managed to send us to summer camps and baseball and horseback riding and tons of other stuff. Again, I feel so blessed. I grew up in the Jewish culture where there's a lot of love, but mothers and sons don't always get along / have complicated relationships. The last 3 years were tough on me and on all the Steinbergs. And I was drawing a blank on remembering the happy times. Here's what's in sharp focus, though. My mom and I grew closer over the last few years than we ever were before. I got to repay her for the loving care she gave me my whole life by caring for her. I learned to reduce my selfishness imperfectly and with many missteps, and find out what it really means to be of service to people. She helped me learn what an honor and a gift it is to care for people. Like Rick said, her absence now leaves a profound hole in me, and I know that everyone in my family is feeling something similar. And for everyone here who will miss her and who are sharing their memories about her and her place in their lives, thank you. So yeah, I will leave the funny stories up to others, and I will share something my mom wrote to me that touches my heart. She wrote, "I can never say enough about all that you do for me. You're there when I'm happy. You're there when I'm sad. You're there for me whenever I need you. What more could a mother want? I've got it all." One last thing. My mom was an artist, writer, director, actor, jazz singer. She loved music, and one of the artists she liked was Leonard Cohen. A few days ago, I randomly came across a song of his I had never heard before, a poem that he set to music. Hearing it just makes me think of her and feel connected to her. And the first lines go like this. "If it be your will that I speak no more, and my voice be still as it was before, I will speak no more. I shall abide until I am spoken for, if it be your will." Thank you, Mom.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Rick, and thank you, Mike. On that table, this was a big part of my work, at least for Mom. Maybe because both of us are creative artists. To me, it was very important that you all be able to see her collected work. When people are famous or whatever, and everyone seems to know their work and it's assembled by other people, but there's so many great artists, really great and talented artists who, for whatever it was, for fate or whatever, just don't get that kind of attention, but their work can still be so incredible. And my mom's work was certainly like that. She had created 11 screenplays that she thought were worthy. I actually found another 2 more, but she didn't, I guess she didn't put down as her thing, so she was still working on those. So 11 screenplays that are finished and good. She had 3 dramatic plays, one of which is going to be read in 3 performances next week. She also had 2 novels, full-length novels, that were mystery romance novels, and just fantastic. One of them I have there, The Baja Road, so you can see that on the table. And then this delightful children's book that just kind of blows me away it wasn't published, called The Littlest Knight, with incredible illustrations she had done. And so this is a big body of work. I'm not including a bunch of short stories and monologues, and as I was going through stuff, I found more and more and more. And just with such a deft ear for dialogue. Gosh, I'm sure some of you will bring that up. It's just uncanny the way she could write dialogue, and also her descriptions. My God, they're just so rich. I'll read one of those a little bit later. So please feel free to go to the table and just take a read of those. That's why I put them all up. They're to be opened and read. And then, the other thing I hadn't realized what a full fashion career, as a fashion designer she had before. It was really when I was just a little kid that she stopped doing that. And so I wasn't aware of it, but I'm going through these scrapbooks, and these aren't minor sketches. These are like major designs for incredible clothes. And I'm looking, Robinson's May Company, all these designers that she was working under. And I saw awards she got for all of this. And I remembered, the little anecdote she told me about Ruth Handler, who was this up and coming, great designer and business maven who'd created this new thing, this Barbie doll. And and she saw Mom's designs, and she said, she interviewed, she says, I want to hire you as my executive assistant because you've got, she really loved her work. And my mom apparently worked for her a couple of months, and then my dad puts the kibosh on it because she's earning more than he is. You need to go stay home and raise kids. And then from there, her creativity just unfurls, like my brothers are saying, all these incredible ways, hand puppets, writing PTA shows, and then really she discovered that what she really wanted most in her soul was to really write. And so she writes, and then she takes classes. I know this because I do this for a living. It's very hard for people as adults to go back to school and take classes. It takes a lot of humility and everything to start from scratch. And she could have been a major, you could have known her as one of the major designers, clothes designers probably. And instead she started from scratch and got into writing. And it just, I just have such awe for what she created. And she, I tend to like writing on my own. I'm really happy in my studio, closet away from the world. My mom was a people person, right? You all knew this. She collaborated. She wrote alone too, but her happiest moments were collaborating with people, whether she was doing it as directing, producing, writing. And to collaborate like that, it takes something that writers really have to work on hard, which is humility. They have to you have to strangle your children, as you say, in your writing world, and be able to acknowledge when there are better ideas. And my mom was so fabulous with that. I tried so much to learn that from her, but she was so good at it. And the joy of making something better working with other people. It was just really, that's one of the things I remember about her. When she did these PTA shows, the whole house was taken over. I remember my dad just left he couldn't stand being here because, you know, we suddenly had 50 parents here, you know, with all their screaming kids and everything. And my mom's just sitting there with a bullhorn or something, you know, getting everyone in place. It was really, you know, that was growing up. Growing up was, like my brother said, so creative. You know, we found these old pictures, and there I was as a little kid with Michael, and we're sitting here with oil paints in the garage. She was teaching us to do oil painting. And, you know, that was that kind of creative world really mattered to me. You know, a personal story for me, probably Dana's the only one who knows this, but I had a very tough time as a child. It will come as a big surprise to many of you. I was the shyest person probably in history. I talked to thousands of people, and I'm very calm and collected, but I was so terrified of people. She created some of those puppets for me so I could talk to the puppet and then have the puppet talk to other people. And my mom used that as a tool to help me communicate with the outside world. It was kind of amazing. And then in second grade, when they took her aside and they said, you know, Rusty really needs to be in a special school. We don't really think he has the intellectual ability to handle things. She said, test him. That was a long time ago. Before we did testing.
Harvard.
I want to add something really quick.
Of course you can. Yeah.
Come up for
Yeah.
something?
You want to do it now? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah. Come on.
There's something I just realized. I
Yeah.
want to
Come on, Mike.
thank my friend Tim Kruska over here. I want you guys to know him. He helped my mom out tremendously with things around the house, sealing her skylights, fixing the house in so many different ways that it's amazing how she would just, like, she would call for Tim and she'd be like, Mike, Tim hasn't called me back and all this. And I'm like, Mom, you got to realize he's our friend that's helping him out. It's not like he's some guy that you just call a service and he just calls you back. But he was always there, and I want to thank him because anything that broke around the house, my mom called Tim and just expected him to be there, and he treated her with such respect and dignity and everything. And I just want everybody to know that. Thank you, Tim.
Thanks, Tim.
And also, my friend Chris Kelly over here did a lot for my mom too, and my brother Rick, and he's just helped out a lot. So thanks, Tim. I love you, man.
There's a butterfly right there.
Just a real quick note, all of you who don't know me, I've worn one of these about 4 times in my life, and I'm doing this out of respect for the mom because Mrs. Steinberg was such a wonderful person to me, and you know, you come up and you have all these things to say, and of course I've forgotten them, but I can tell you one thing for sure. But she's a very strong woman who had a very strong support package around her, support team. You can see it by, if you just look at the house, for instance, look how pristine it is. You know how hard it is to keep a house looking like this by yourself?
Yeah.
When you're 90 years old, first of all.
Thanks.
I live in a cracker box and I can't even keep the thing straight. You know? But there's one thing, okay, bear in mind, this woman was 90 years old, 90 pounds, 90 years old, soaking wet, you know. And one day I was here, and she loved her dogs a lot. They really meant a lot.
Oh, yeah.
One day I closed the gate and I didn't latch all the way, you know. And one of her dogs got out. And she comes out looking, there's no one else here but me. And her dog got, and she let out a scream that just curdled my blood, you know. And then I went, uh-oh. You know, she made it very clear to be careful about her dogs. She started running down the street calling her dog's name. And it scared the hell out of me. I thought she was going to come back and kill me. I know it. And as she's screaming, running down the street, I'm going, oh, God, where's my cold weather jacket? I know I can outrun her, but it won't be till I get to Saskatchewan, probably. You know? But she's a very strong person. She showed a strong will, you know, one of the most strong-willed persons you'd ever know. And I do respect her a lot. And this is out of respect for her to dress nice. And I didn't think Mike or Rick or Mike or you would ever expect to see me wearing a tie, you know. I took my jacket off and laid it over there. But she was a wonderful woman, and yes, I miss her already tremendously.
Thanks
You know,
for everything you did for her.
I think I am the only one who's worked on this house in the past 30 or 40 years. You know? And she trusted me, so, you know, that means a lot, you know.
Rick did a little bit.
It's not so bad. There's a few things that need to be done. It's all right. I will miss her.
Tim, you look great in a tie. Thank you guys for doing
Thanks,
that.
Tim.
I just love this. You know, this is what it's like in this family. You know, I started, you can't tell a story without being interrupted, and I just love that. I just love that. Yeah, just very quickly getting back. So I didn't go to a special school. They tested me, and they discovered I was gifted. And it was only because she stood up for me. And that's, she did, I saw her do similar things with all my brothers. And she was like this. All of you know what an advocate she became for you. She could be your strongest advocate. She was an advocate when I had her, when she was working with me in the youth orchestra. She was an advocate for all the other actors and all the other writers. She really cared. So I just want to list a couple of those things. You know, we've talked about the postcards that Amy was making and how strong she felt about democracy. It was a big deal. Doing the right thing was a big deal. And she, like many of you, were so troubled with the world we live in today. And I remember her just saying, how come, you know, all I can do now is write, you know, but she would say to me, you've got to do more. You've got to do more. Her friends were everything, and that will come through as you hear more things. You know, Mom, she just was a gatherer. So she would have these New Year's parties, women only. I would crash the parties in the afternoon, and make these incredible soups, and people, you know, very emotional time, New Year's, and people would get together year and year and talk about what was going on with their lives. And she had the groups. There was always the writing group, there was the acting group, there was the singing group, you know, the parent groups and everything. And so this was, I think, one reason when I called people why they had so much to say and why they said the loss felt so personal to them. And then one last thing I just want to add before I start turning it over to the people. My mom had style, right?
Yes.
Sandy had style. You know, I joke about her bohemian costuming. It's really a compliment. She just knew how to put herself together, and she knew the right way and the wrong way. And I consider myself very expert in music because I spent my whole life in it, but boy, did I learn the difference between hearing and seeing when I remodeled my house. And we had to pick a white paint. Now, I'm an idiot. I thought white was white. I didn't know there were 1,000 shades of white. I also didn't know my mother had the ability to see the difference between 1,000 shades of white. I'd be looking at white. She says, "What are you talking about? That's green." What? I did, and then she would show me a sample with, you know, bright white, and I says, "Can you see the green in it? Are you blind?" You know. And then this one. How about this one? That's gray. What's wrong with you, Rusty? So that's how I got my house remodeled, because she just had this amazing visual acuity, and you can see it. Just, you know, how important it was to have that, whatever, this blue thing with that blue thing against that blue door trim. She just noticed all those things. It was just impossible, because I grew up with this aural ability, had no visual ability whatsoever, and she was just amazing to me how she'd do that and how style was so important to her. And I now would like to call up some people, and then later I have some stuff to read from people who couldn't come. One little line. So many of her friends said wonderful things. Jill McIntyre, who's now, I believe, is living, I hope I don't get it wrong, Jill, Chicago. She said, "I don't know where your mom is, but wherever she is, I promise you, she's doing it."
Yeah, that's true.
And I think we can all resonate to that. Carrie, would you like to say something? Come on up.
Rusty, you forgot to mention your mom was a great comedian as well.
Yeah,
She wrote serious stuff, and she was a comedian.
Yeah, absolutely. Bye, Amy.
Bye. I would never leave if I didn't have
She's acting tonight.
Break the leg.
Lily.
Yeah. Sorry.
So, those of you that don't know us, it's my sister and I.
Speak into the mic.
Okay. We're very short. Thank you. All right. Thank you. So we come from a very long line of really strong women. And Lisa and I, Sandy was our aunt.
Our great aunt.
Our great aunt. And our whole everything, Aunt Sandy was at. And we did everything with our cousins, every holiday, birthday parties, beach days, growing up. my mom was her niece. Unfortunately, our mother has passed as well. So we want to represent on that side because obviously our mother would be heartbroken because that was not just her aunt, that was a sister to her. So we're going to try really hard to represent for our mom. All I can say is that there was just always so much laughter, so much food. It's always about the food. Yeah, thank you. This is my daughter. My other daughter is in DC. Just every childhood memory I can think of Aunt Sandy as part of it. And I didn't just call her Aunt Sandy. She was my auntie because you can have family, but then you choose who you really mesh with the most. And Aunt Sandy was just always so fun, just spectacular, and so strong and smart, and always extremely funny. Always was encouraging us to do our best and to try as hard as we could. She brought a lot of not just love but creativity into our life. Supported everything we did. Came to events and birthdays, like I said, having my children, getting married, everything. And so growing up, Mom, her mother, our great-grandmother, I think we would just sit back and be in awe of the relationship they all had. So it was my great-grandmother Goldie and our grandmother Muriel and our mother Audrey, obviously. And they were like the three musketeers, basically. And our mom always told us, like, her best memories of childhood was just being with her grandmother and being with her aunts. And that's pretty special. Growing up, we went to the zoo, Rick, like 100 million times. To the tar pits and the museums. And every single thing that was fun, Auntie Sandy was game for.
But 15 minutes late.
Yeah, but later. It's just really hard to think that all three of those generations, or three, are gone. But together. I think that's the one thing I keep trying to manifest and visualize, is them all together laughing, playing cards, and trying to change this crazy world. We need as much help as we can get. I mean, I saw here, I'll read it really quick if I can. I just thought of a poem. Everything was, I think the thing that was so beautiful, every single time I talked to my great-grandmother and my grandma and my mom and Aunt Sandy was, I love you more. And that's what I always just remember. It's like, you know, in life, if you don't tell the people you love them, you'll regret it forever. Every single time I talked to Aunt Sandy, she told me she loved me more. And that we were her darlings. And it was just, everything just, even when she didn't feel well, it was just so full of enthusiasm and love. And everything was so great when you were with her. Even your lipstick color or anything you had was just like over the top amazing. And I'm just so grateful for the strength of all those women. I'm grateful for the love. I'm grateful for the family. And the incredible laughter and joy that I always felt, and the safety with all of them. So going forward, I hope they know, and I hope they're watching me, that I will carry that legacy on, the three of us and my other daughter, and we will keep this family going, and we will honor them with their memories and show the pictures and keep the stories that we were always told, because that's how you keep people around. So I just want to tell Aunt Sandy, I know you said you love us more, but we love you more. So I saw this poem because I didn't even know if I could talk coming up here. And also through the loss of my mom, nobody could have supported me more through that too, Aunt Sandy. So it says, for my auntie, I miss your kindness and your love. I'll miss your happy smile. And I promise that every single day I'll remember for a while. We shared something truly special, something that can never be replaced. A bond that the years can never fade. Memories that time cannot erase. To lose you brings such sadness, but know that you lived on in my heart and in my memory. shines the guiding light you shone. So sleep now softly, angel, in your eternal rest. To have called you my auntie, I was truly blessed. Do you want to say anything? My dad wasn't able to come here tonight, and he just wanted me to say that, because he's ill right now, and he's living with me, and we're all taking care of him. He just said that she was a spark of light, and that from the minute he met her, he just thought she was the greatest thing ever, and he wanted us to just say that how much he loved her as well. So, thank you. Do you want to say something? Can she? No, go ahead. Okay. I'll stay up here. Are you sure?
I don't know how to use this thing.
Excuse me. We just need to make it short.
Everything needs to be shorter for me, Rusty, in life. Okay. Is it working? Okay. I was trying to think of how to summarize what she meant to me and what it was like to be around her. And honestly, she was just such a fierce force of nature. I have a couple funny stories, a couple sad anecdotes. I'm going to try to start with the funny because we all could use that right now, I think. When I first met Aunt Sandy, I was around 8 years old and I was the pickiest, crankiest little kid. She didn't care. She didn't care at all. And I remember just thinking, I'm like, wow, this is a really cool person. You know, in the way you don't know how to describe how someone is just everything you've ever imagined an adult to be. I don't know, it was just, she told me about the arts that she pursued and I thought, wow, this is a goddess. She showed me one of her short films that she participated in, and keep in mind I was also a very scaredy little kid. I grew up in a bubble. And within that, there was a prop version of her that was, to put it lightly, slaughtered. And that night, I tried to sleep on her couch, not a single second of sleep. And the next day I got up, she was up bright and early, and I told her that she scarred me. And I remember her saying, "My darling Lily," and she grabbed my hand, she goes, "I really did it." And she explained everything, the whole process, how they made a prop of her and all these different things. And in that moment, I was like, I want to hear this woman talk every second for the rest of my life. So that's just the first real memory I have of her. And I think it's just such a description of what our relationship would end up being. Hours upon hours of conversations that made no sense to anyone but us about subjects that we barely knew anything about, and yet we were just holding each other's attention. I also remember, I was never just Lily to her. I was my darling Lily, my dearest Lily, my brilliant Lily. And when you're a teenager and you're not sure of yourself or really your identity, who you are, what your place is in the world, having someone who constantly accompanies your name with something so kind, it made all the difference. I became her pen pal when I went to college. We would text constantly. And the one thing I really loved when I came back here was we would do tarot cards, and she just kept telling me I reminded her so much of her mother and her sister, and most of all, her niece that way. And so, if you see any rocks around the house, that has been my contribution to her designs. All I know is that the biggest reason we're all so hurt and so upset is because we know there's never going to be anyone like her. It's hard enough when you lose someone you care about, let alone knowing no one can ever even attempt to take their place. Can ever make you feel that same way, and from the bottom of my heart, I'm so sorry you are all feeling that same pain, because I know what it's like, and I would not wish this upon anyone. But I really hope that right now she's in such a good place, and she's understanding the impact she made on all of us. And especially the people who couldn't even be here and are probably so upset about it. Thank you for listening.
You're great.
Raise this up a little bit.
First of all, Lily, thank you so much for that. I want you to know how often my mom told me how much she enjoyed the time that she spent with you. The fact that it mattered so much to you to get to know her, and how much fun she had showing you all these old pictures and connecting you up with the family. But also, as you know, she just admired so much of who you are and what you're about. And you definitely carry such a strong piece in our family. I want you to know it. You are a bright light too. Okay. And to Carrie and Lisa, thank you for saying such beautiful things. And we all share it together. And I will say, if you're able to stay longer, one of the things, you know, when you go through this process, most people here have done this, you go through a huge inventory of someone's life, and it's not all horrible stuff, it's some wonderful stuff. And one of the wonderful things is the pictures. How lucky we are that our parents were in the 20th century. We had photography and everything, and my God, we got everything digitized. You need to see it. We've gotten some amazing pictures of you as children and everything. So that was, anyway, wonderful. Mona, would you like to come up and talk, please?
Okay, well, I will be brief. My name is Mona Deutschmiller, and I am a playwright, but I used to be a hard-bitten litigator. And I met Sandi for the first time when she was directing the LA Youth. She was director of the LA Youth Orchestra, which Rusty was conducting, and our daughter Thais, who's now 35, was a violinist in the orchestra. So as a dutiful but very busy parent, as I was practicing law, I would show up at meetings, and I did things, and I couldn't believe that this incredibly young-looking woman was Russell Steinberg's mother. So I started off with a kind of cognitive dissonance, and she was so slender. I mean, I felt like a hippopotamus next to her. And I was much thinner back then, too. Anyway, years go by, we get along well, and we end up in the same screenwriting group, Writer's Block, run by Bonnie Sanders, who's sitting over here. And I invite her to come try out Fierce Backbone, a theater company devoted to the development of new work that I had been a member of since 2008. And at one point she said to me, "You're so different." She really connected to my work, and I connected to her screenplays very deeply. So we had this bond because we really, really loved each other's writing. And she said, "Well, you know, when I met you years ago, you were a lawyer. And now you're somebody else." And, you know, that other person was always in me. But Sandi made me feel so valued and listened to and appreciated, and and in her work, I particularly admired. In screenplays, the idea is to have a lot of white space on the page. You have short scenes, unlike plays. You have dialogue. She was a wonderful dialogue writer. But the other thing she did that absolutely blew me away was all of her narrative, the things in between the characters talking, where she's setting the scene, she's describing what's going on. She could incredibly efficiently create the whole mood and style of the piece in such a fluid and liquid way. You knew exactly, it was fantastic. And I always envied that skill tremendously. And we would talk about writing, we would talk about work. It is a very rare gift to make a good friend for the first time in your late 60s. I just was not expecting that. And one time I asked her how old she was. And at the time, she was 86. And she told me, somewhat reluctantly, and then she said, "If you tell anyone, I will kill you." I could not believe it. The woman was so vital and energetic and creative and witty and funny and insanely obsessed with dogs. I am not a dog lover. I mean, they're okay, but I had in one of my horror films, I had a terrible dog that people were afraid of. You know, this did not endear me to Sandy. But I have lost a wonderful friend, and she gave me a compliment that I thought, she said to me, Mona, you're a force of nature. And I thought, you've got to be kidding. You're the force of nature. I'm like a little weakling, you know, but I so admired and respected her writing, her art, and she loved those 4 boys. Boy, did she love you guys. And I had the sense that she had managed to somehow internalize in a very physical way the whole, it's like she was learning all of the time. And as you were growing up, the way she would say, well, you know, I have 4 sons, I know a thing or two. She was very sexy and very witty and very funny and so physical. Everything was so connected to the body, and I loved that in her work. And I try to avoid what they called at Milton Community High School, where our daughter was a student, lashon hara, negative talk, gossip. But Sandy was the rare person who we could get together and we could both agree, oh yes, we hate that guy's work. And it was such a joy, you know, because we would allow ourselves to say this to each other. So I know that the family is hurting. Her memory will be a blessing for sure. It already is. What a force of nature she was.
Thank you so much, Mona, and you really captured a lot of her, and she really did feel you were a force, and she would always tell me how much she surely enjoyed, you know, your ideas and working with you and loved your writing. And I hope one of the things you learned today is that, you know, the way you reinvented yourself, you know, into a writer, you see that she also is in a process of continually inventing herself. So that's good, reinventing. Bonnie, would you like to? We'd love for you to come and share. Thank you so much.
I'm Bonnie, and I've known Sandy a really long time. Yeah, I'm short also. Everybody's been so eloquent and extemporaneous, and I wrote out a whole bunch of stuff, and a lot of it's been touched on, so I'm going to kind of babble, I think. It's a sad day. Before I even start, there's a good friend of ours that for some reason he was overlooked, but he couldn't be here anyhow. And he did write a poem, and his name is Alan Ross, and he was also a writer. He was the founder of our writer's block. And he just wrote a brief poem because he's in Texas right now and going on a cruise today. He said, "My thoughts on this so sad a day, on Sandy, my friend who has just passed away. Forever a joy as a writer's block member. Each time she read, I will forever remember. From words she had wrought and the many works she had written kept us laughing and crying. Yep, we were Steinbergian smitten. From our writers group through so many years, her writing evoked much laughter and tears. Her talent incredible, her output immense. Her characters had depth, yet infused common sense. Her innate ability did her talent impart, not only the story, but had the touch of her heart. But much more of a writer and an actress supreme, her pure zest for living, and with us shared her dream." And yeah, he wrote that. Yeah, I'm just going to have to skim through this because a lot of it has been touched upon, but something I didn't write was something that somebody mentioned before about how Sandy was always so encouraging. And of late, I have not had a chance to see much of Sandy, sadly, but I did see her about 2 months ago. And we came out to the house, she showed me around and what she'd been making and doing in the house. And we were outside, and because I've been going through such a hard time myself, my writing muse has been gone. It still is. It's just not there. And she said to me, well, what you need, Bonnie, she said, you need a writing buddy. She said, I'll be your writing buddy. She said, I mean, even here, as sick as she was, she's wanting to help me because she understood what I was going through. And I thought that was remarkable. And I didn't even think about it until now. But she was so majorly encouraging to all the writers. Like when we had our writers' block meetings, people would be, oh my God, they'd be out to kill each other, you know, and tearing each other apart, trying to critique in a good way. But Sandi really did do it in a good way. She was just kind and encouraging and helpful, and she was wonderful about that. But I think, Mona, you said you brought Sandi to the writers group, but she had come many, many years before that.
Oh, I meant Fierce Backbone.
Oh,
if I
okay,
said Writer's
okay.
Block, I misspoke.
Yeah, because, you know, I don't even remember how long I have known Sandi for. I can't even remember back, but it's probably like 35 years, maybe even more. Because our writers group has been going on for more than 40 years. And it still intermittently is going on. And so we knew her then, way back then, many, many years ago. Then in later years, we didn't see each other as much because she sort of stopped coming to the writers group and wasn't there as often. But when we would meet, there was kind of almost an intimacy between us. It would just kind of pick up where we had left off. And we used to meet for lunch at Whole Foods out here because she was always dieting on some kind of a special diet, special eating thing that she was doing. And Whole Foods seemed to fit the bill. And we always, the first thing we talked about was our kids. She had 4 boys, I had 3 girls and a boy, and kids. That was the main topic that we talked about. And then we went on to talk about, you know, other stuff. And I think I was the first person, I went with Sandi to get her first dog. And I think that was Da Vinci.
Yeah.
That was her first one.
Well,
and we went, I remember.
First small dog, yeah.
Huh?
We had dogs all growing up.
Yeah,
that was
no,
the first
I know,
small
but
dog,
her
yeah.
first real dog, the first dog that she said, I want my own dog, I want a dog.
Yeah.
So we went and we picked him out together. And then when we would go out to lunch, we could talk about kids and dogs, because that was her 5th kid. Somebody had mentioned that before, and that was true. Let's see, I'm going to just kind of babble around here. Let's see. Okay, as well as we knew each other, and I thought we knew each other well, I was amazed at how little I knew about her until what you wrote, Rusty. Yeah. I think that just was, I was astounded, because Sandi, she was so unassuming. She never talked about those things. I mean, she had a really, really interesting life. I mean, she had a life that you could write a biopic about and be fascinated by it. You know, and maybe I'll do that. It was really, I mean, she was really, really amazing individual. But, the memories that I'd like to share are, Sandi was a partner with Alan, who's not here, and I in 2 different businesses. And the first one was called Let's Do Lunch. And Let's Do Lunch, I'm going to have to read it because it was kind of complicated. But every 6 weeks, we invited writers and producers to a luncheon at the Olympic Collection, where writers had an opportunity to pitch their stories to executives whose shows, films best fit their genre. At each event, we attempted to fill 11 tables made up of 10 writers and 1 producer. The producers switched tables for dessert so each writer could pitch to 2 producers. Repeat guests needed to be seated with new execs. In theory, it was smart and simple. Well, in fact, it was havoc, because we couldn't set up the tables until the night before the event, because we had writers that suddenly canceled, we had writers that wanted to suddenly come, and the worst thing of all is we had producers that backed out last minute. So this was a situation, it was like, picture planning a wedding table, you know, every 6 weeks. And we would get together, the night before at my house. We had all these note cards and things spread out with people's names on them. We had the tables, and we had trying to fit these writers into these tables with certain producers, and we were so slap happy that, I mean, you just can't believe how much we just laughed and laughed and laughed and laughed and drank wine and ate, and laughed and laughed, and it was just so silly and fun that it was like better than New Year's Eve, you know? It was like, it was like, let's do lunch Eve. It just was a really fun evening instead of horrible. So that was one. And then that business failed because of the producers, primarily. And so we had a spin-off, and that was called the 2020 contest. And that we would have writers send us 20 pages of their, first 20 pages of their scripts. And after the first 20 pages, then we would send back a checklist of the things that were working well and weren't working well in the screenplays. And that kind of gave us a lot of kind of clout in the writing world. And they started to call upon us to kind of teach classes and to do seminars and just little things like that, which we enjoyed. We did, down at the convention center. But on one particular one, Sandy and I were teaching a class, just one class, and it was for the learning tree. I don't know if anybody remembers that. I don't even remember where we were. It was the learning tree. And we concocted something. And so we're going to set the scene. There's a classroom filled with eager, want-to-be screenwriters. But there's no instructor there. Nobody's there. And they're all sitting there, where can they be? Sandy and I storm into the room. We're screaming at each other. What do you mean? There is absolutely nothing wrong with the word attendee. And Sandy's saying, it's pompous, it's horrible, how could you use that word? And we're going on, and we're like ready to kill each other. We're not paying any attention to the class. We're just, walking in there and having this big, big fight. And then we stand up in front of the class, suddenly, silence. And all we say is, conflict. And that was it. Anyway, how could anybody ever forget Sandy? Nobody in this world could ever forget Sandy. She was, as Mona said, a force of nature. I loved her. And that's it.
Thank you. Thank you, Bonnie. Thank you so much, Bonnie. For those of you, when we're done here, please sign the picture we have of my mom over there and fill out the guest book. We would love to have that, have you record whatever memories you want to share in there. You guys kind of reminded me of other things. There was downsides to being the son, son of Sandy too, because you couldn't have like junk food. It was just not allowed. So when if you couldn't trade lunch with anyone at school because you had this whole wheat bread that weighed 10 pounds, with tuna salad, and no one wanted it. So we all had to get past that too. I want to share. There are some wonderful people who couldn't make it today who feel so strongly about Mom. I want to first recognize Joanne Hubbard, who is a lifelong friend, and we were planning to have Joanne here. We spent almost every Sunday with Joanne and her husband Dick at the beach, because that's what you do when you don't have money. You go to the beach. And I grew up in this household with my mother and Joanne barbecuing on Sundays, and then the two men, my father and her husband, arguing about politics. We would all sit and watch 60 Minutes and then argue. And this, I'm watching this little kid, and my dad, super conservative, and then my mom super liberal. A lot of times they weren't speaking by the end, but they kept going at it. And in other words, it was still engaged all the time. And so I got to hear all these different points of view. It was really great. So we missed Joanne. She wasn't, because of health, she was not able to attend us either, but she's in our hearts very much today. One of the hardest things talking to some of her old friends who live far away is that they just poured out stories I didn't know. It's like, who is this person? So I had to make a call to Peggy and Duane Young. Peggy is one of my mom's oldest friends. They just love each other's writing. She lives now in Texas, San Antonio. And she started saying, well, you know about the Bill Clinton story, don't you? And I go, no. Well, yeah, I knew that she met Bill Clinton because we're related to Henry Waxman, who's a prominent Democratic congressman, and I know she'd gone to Washington and met President Clinton. She says, "No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the week after." And I go, "What? What are you talking about? You don't know? She didn't tell you?" And I said, "No, she never told me." She said, "He called her." This is the governor of Arkansas. Is this that cute little screenwriter I met last week in Washington? Yeah, yes, I met you in Washington. You know, how are you doing? I'm going to be in LA. I wonder if we could get together. And according to Peggy, my mom famously said, "Really? And do what precisely?" And he, well, you know, we'll get together and everything. She goes, "Aren't you a married man?" So anyway, she put President Clinton in his place. Yeah. I never told me that story. She told me the story of O.J. Simpson being a brute and throwing her in the pool with all her clothes on. She told me that story. I got to hear things like that, but I never got to hear that story.
Tell us that story?
She walks into a party she's invited to at O.J. Simpson's house. This was way before, you know, all the things we knew about him, football star. And he just took her in his arms, carried her. She weighed, as you guys have said, like 85, 90 pounds, and just threw her in clothes right into the swimming pool. And it wasn't like a fun thing, you know. She just said she had it. She got out and left. That was her O.J. Simpson story. She has very many wonderful celebrity stories. One of the nicest ones, you guys all know Jonathan Winters, the comedic legend. So because of her friend Jim Pasternak, he was working on a film with him. And so she had Jonathan Winters and Tim Conway over here at the house. In fact, Jonathan Winters, he did a little art piece that he dedicated to my mom. She has him in her office. And, you know, that was really funny because she would go to lunch. He liked her a lot, and, you know, they had really great times. But she would always say, Jim always complained because, you know, he would never take up the bill. You know, so she would talk about that and just how great they were together. Jonathan Winters, Tim Conway, you know, such geniuses. So that was really good. We went to a sushi restaurant down the street, and I saw in the next table Edward James Olmos, who's an actor I actually admire, and I went up to him. And then he said, "Well, who are you with?" And I said, "Well, it's my mom." So he comes over to the table and they start talking, get this conversation like they're old friends. And he just gives her this big hug. And, you know, there was this immediate intimacy. It was really great. They were really like sympathetic spirits. It was really good. Anyway, I wanted to tell you that story that Peggy told me about Bill Clinton. She also wrote to me, "Please convey my absolute shock and devastation to your brothers, Ricky, Andy, and Michael. To all of you, I feel so lost. Such a sudden gap that your feeling of loss must be beyond the beyond. I'm so very deeply sorry for this very sad news. As Duane said after your call, gosh, we thought Sandy was indestructible." And I share that feeling. We got to see Peggy and Duane before my mom died. They came here to town, and it was really important for my mom to see them. And so we had lunch together, and that's when Duane, who's a surgeon and everything, we told them about mom's lung cancer, and he gave us all kinds of advice that was actually really, really wonderful. And Peggy wrote, "When we saw her that day and walked to her car in Encino, we could barely keep up with her," which is probably true. My mom walked very fast. And so she went on, and she said, "In this weekend's Wall Street Journal, there's an editorial about Tolstoy by Peggy Noonan. One of his characters' conclusion in War and Peace said, 'To love life is to love God.' And at the end, when Sandy kept saying, 'I don't want to die,' which is true, that said how much she loved life. Tolstoy's line and her comment are a comfort. She was a marvel." So I wanted to share that. That was from Peggy Young. Thank you, Peggy. Linda Seger. Do any of you know Linda? Another old friend. I'm seeing heads nod. Linda is also a force of nature. Talk about reinventing herself. I'm getting to know Linda because now she's performing as a pianist with a 2-piano team. But Linda was one of the top script consultants really worldwide. And she writes to me, "Dear Russell, what a heartbreak, especially when you think that she battled so hard and has really gotten somewhere with it, and then to have such a reversal and everything." She said, "I still remember some of the lines in Sandy's screenplays that would make me laugh. I think I used one in my book on character. Quote, 180 Guatemalan pounds squeezed into a pink teddy." Sandy had such a humor and style that just seemed so specifically hers, and I so admired how she just kept going with writing and acting and kept her this bright light shining. It is such a blessing to have a mother that appreciates and keeps positive energy going and knows how to fulfill herself. I don't think we ever lose a good legacy like that. And then Linda writes to me again, because it really was bothering her about that quote. And she said, here, I found it. It's in my book, Creating Unforgettable Characters. And it's on page 29. Quote, Maria Teresa, 50s, awakens with a start, a big woman with small illusions. 180 Guatemalan pounds squeezed into a pink lace teddy. She grabs a cluster of garlic to her bosom and begins to chant. And Linda says it's from her script called Curses, which is my favorite of her scripts. And in my book, I called it, quote, one of my favorite descriptions, which gives a sense of the comic dimensions that are to come in her script. I was hoping I had an index in this book, she goes on still. And I did. There Sandy was, her name in all her index glory, just above Stepford Wives, and a little ways above a reference to Oliver Stone. You know, comedy was such a big part of my mom and all her friends. Rachel Parker, who now lives in Chicago, had this for me to read. I met Sandy at Alan Feinstein's acting class in Studio City. Alan had curated people with varying experience levels, backgrounds, and ages, and many lively and profound discussions were had about work, business, and life. Always the most interesting contributor to these conversations was Sandy. She seemed to have lived in an infinite number of lives. And well, you can see that from all the stuff I have there, right? And she expressed her views of the world and the people in it with both wisdom and curiosity. Sandy's scene work was also anchored in this wisdom, but carried out with a mischievous sense of play. At 46 years old, I found myself girl-crushing on a woman who is somehow still youthful in her 80s. There came a point when Sandy and I started spending time together outside of class, off to see a showcase or a friend's play. Ultimately, we mostly tucked ourselves in her tranquil home with her beloved pups, Leonardo and Da Vinci. We spent many hours pursuing ways in which to get her incredible writings read by theaters across the country, got our last round of headshots taken by the same photographer here, and also spent a great deal of time brainstorming how I might move forward after a marriage gone south. She listened deeply, advised with compassion, and I felt fully seen and heard. In our every interaction, Sandy demonstrated the meaning of the word sisterhood. Our time together was too brief. I moved out of my marital apartment to a space even farther from Encino, which made commuting more lengthy and pricey for a gal starting over. And then the pandemic, curtailing connection. But Sandy and I shared a moment, a beautiful moment, that expanded my ability to have honest exchanges, inspired me to always move from a place of curiosity and to keep creating in some form or other always. I love you, Sandy. That's Rachel Parker. Yeah. Devo couldn't make it here, also a good friend of Sandy's, Devo Cutler-Rubinstein, also a very creative person. She goes, I wanted to send this thought regarding your mom. Sandy was one of my first collaborators. We wrote 2 short comedy scripts, collaborated on other things, songs and ideas. Our short film scripts, one was produced and both were included in my book, What's the Big Idea? Writing Shorts. Her sample scripts were used for the last 15 years where I taught screenwriting for USC's summer film program. Our favorite is based on the adaptation of John Irving's short story. By the way, I just discovered that in my mom's writing. I didn't remember that one. Sandy and I wrote dramedy short script that got me accepted into the prestigious Discovery Directors Program, where emerging directors get to direct a short film that also got distribution on Showtime. She was kind, patient, inspired, and truly the easiest and one of the most talented writers I've ever partnered with. Our short did not get produced, but she ended up coaching me on a number of projects, and Sandy was on board to help me and my husband develop Peacock Blues. She was always supportive. I'm heartbroken, saddened to lose her in this human realm, a true mensch that was honest but caring. I believe she is stirring up a storm of creativity and fun on that other dimension. Happy heavenly new day. My wonderful pal, you are missed. My heart hurts knowing, at least for now, I will not see your sunshiny face until we meet again. Much love, Devo Cutler-Rubinstein. You can see the power One last one before I turn it over to any of you who'd like to speak. This is from Matt Kamm, and Matt was a good friend of my mom's during the pandemic. He couldn't be here today because he found out that his 2 roommates had COVID, so he wanted to stay away. And I was looking forward to meeting him, but I know it'll be another time. So he writes here, like Sandi, I'm an LA native. I came to know Sandi through the playwright development group Fierce Backbone. We first met virtually, and I think I only saw her 3 times. Face to face. But what I remember most is our phone calls. We're both practitioners of the lost art of having, quote, very long phone conversations, unquote. We'd talk for an hour or more at a time. She'd tell me stories of growing up in LA back in the 50s when there was a stadium near the farmer's market with mini cars that would race around the track. She once said that her and her friends and family would walk to the track and sometimes meet interesting people. It was a time past, but a time I love hearing about in the city I grew up in. Yet what was most enjoyable to me were the talks about working in film. I was born in '77 and early on developed a love for the movies that lasted through the 80s and 90s. And during that time, Sandi was working in the industry writing and editing scripts. To hear her talk about those times rekindled the magic I felt about the movies as a boy. She said it was a rough industry, yet she always had a deep love and respect for it and those who worked in it. Underneath that respect was a love for the craft of writing. She was proud of what she wrote, but was always honing her skills and trying to make her work better. This is where our paths intersected. She joined Fierce Backbone during the pandemic with the hope of improving plays she'd written, and she did. She took the feedback and elevated a full-length play and numerous short plays to a producible level. This feedback often came from people who were 3 or 4 generations younger. It didn't matter. She never thought she had it down. She never thought she knew more. It was about the craft and the love. You'll often hear that you should never stop growing. Sandi never did. I'll close by saying we always ended our phone conversations by telling each other how much our friendship meant to each other. Thank goodness we did. With Sandi, it was always about the love. And I'd say Matt really got my mom really well. Yeah. Thank you, Matt. I would now like to invite anyone who would like to share a special memory, totally optional, about my mom. We would love to hear from you. And again, I want to let you know we've got things to sign in there and lots of food. But please, anyone who'd like to come up, please come up.
My heart is pounding, but I couldn't let Russell's request down. The year is 2005, and I walk into the Milken High School with my 8-year-old son to audition to join a Los Angeles youth orchestra. The name was big enough, nevertheless, even imagining an 8-year-old to be able to join a youth orchestra. And here we are being greeted with a lovely woman who was within my own stature. She always kidded about a look where she must have been even taller than me, I don't know.
About the same.
About the same. But she had that spirit and that aura of a mother. And she was so kind, so welcoming, so hospitable, that pretty much washed the nature of the audition, and you felt like you're joining a family. And rest be assured it was. It was a minimum of 13, 14, 15 years of my extended family's life. My 2 sons joined the orchestra one after the other. Russell became an amazing role model, mentor. it was beyond a conductor role. Sandy's place in my heart was that she loved her kids. She loved each and every one of the sons, and she could see that in my eyes, so that was our common denominator, that we had a deep, deep love for our family. She looked at each one of you as the corner of that square, that you should continue connecting the dots and honor her legacy. Losing a mother is not easy, no matter what age and at what position or nature. I've lost my own mother. There's not a moment that you will forget her. She will be with you. You will carry her in your heart. She's here for sure. It's too soon for you to realize that because she's gone not too long. But for sure her presence, her absence will be present in your life forever in your heart. The deeper the grief, it shows the deeper the love you have for her. And what a beautiful ceremony. There could not have been a better way to honor this woman. She was a fighter. She was a force of nature. And for sure her spirit will be all over. On the first day of Sukkot, what a beautiful way to cherish this beautiful flower that we had amongst us. Thank you for having me, and thank you for giving me
It's beautiful. Thank you.
My name's Chris. I'm Rick's friend.
Taller friend.
Yeah, taller friend. Mike's friend. I don't know Rusty as well. I'm friends with Andy. I've known Rick over 40 years. And I just want to say that many years ago I was in, I think, 4th grade. And Sandy was doing the play at Nestle Avenue School. And she was there with the lady that did the music on the piano. And they said, "Oh no, he can't sing. He can't sing that part." And I'll never forget that. And if Sandy were here right now with us, which she is, I would say thank you for not letting me sing that part. But all in all, through the years, I lost my mother and father. My mother early, and then my father and my brother. And Sandy always opened her home to me. 28 years ago, Rick and I built the stairs going up there, and I remember Sandy being worried, well, is the concrete going to match? And I'm thinking, yeah, it's going to match. It's going to take some years. And I came back and I said, well, it almost matches now, And she was just so cool and such a classy woman and a true matriarch in the community, just a real pillar. And there are so many young men and women in this community and Los Angeles have been touched by Sandy. And I can see that by all of her beautiful friends here, many of whom I don't know. And, I didn't see many a dry eye in this house, really. Rusty, I'm sorry. Andy, my heart goes out to you, beautifully spoken. Mike, man, I'm sorry. And Rick, most of all, I'm sorry to you. And Dana, I've just seen the misery in all of you guys just struggling through this thing. It just seemed like yesterday I was eating Chinese food with Sandy, and she was so vibrant, full of life and joy, and what a great woman. What a great woman. And, I'm really going to miss her. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. to lower this for you.
Hi, my name is Ardyth, and I met Sandi about 5 or 6 years ago when she was having a reading of her play. And I didn't know her, someone else had invited me to the reading. And afterwards, I was just going to leave, and I thought, this is the smallest person I've ever seen. And she looked so vulnerable that I said, well, I'm just going to go tell her how much I liked it. So I went down to tell her how much I liked it, and she took my hand. And so we just stood there holding hands. And I just fell in love with her right then. So we became friends over the last few years. And I was living in Calabasas and working at Burbank. So on the way to work on Fridays, we would stop and go get toast and avocado at what's the name of the restaurant your father designed?
Oh, there was a Coral Tree where you were there.
Tree.
Yes, yeah.
The Coral Tree.
Building
And
design,
and then one day it was like, this is way too expensive. Do you really want the whole thing? Can't we just split it? It's like, great, because she could see possibilities in everything. No matter what she was doing, there was possibilities. And I have to tell you guys that looking at all of you, I'm so surprised that I was not the most important person to her. Because she really made me feel that way. It's like I didn't know all these people knew her and loved her, and she loved them. I thought I was kind of it, and I thought this poor woman's gotten to be like 89, and I'm like the first person she loved her. But with her sons, of course, she talked constantly about them, and Amy. Honestly, I'm sorry she's left, because I wanted to tell her how often, just in her day-to-day, how important Amy was to her and her dogs. And she was somebody who brought the child out in people, I think. I had sort of a wannabe friends and family band, and after Sandi had her horrible dog incident, she was feeling very depressed, I think. And so one night I brought over the guitar, and the person she had here was also a musician who was living on the other side of the house. And so he came over and brought his violin, and it was like the highlight of my life to be accompanied by a violin, just playing folk songs on the guitar. And so Sandi grabbed the bongos. She was doing the bongos, and I've forgotten the name of the young guy who
Lucas.
Lucas, yeah. Then Lucas says, so where's the wine? It's like, what do you mean, where's the wine? He goes, you can't have music without wine. So she brought out the wine, and it was just a wonderful evening. And it was so much fun to be friends with her. I'm going to miss her something fierce. And we would spend like hours on the phone. I don't know how she had so much time to talk to everybody. I thought, oh, nobody must call her. So this is quite a shock. I'm so honored to be in your company, all of you who loved her, and even though I know her far less than most of you, she meant the world to me. And I just know I meant the world to her too. So thank you, everybody, and thank you so much for having this and for having us here.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Ardyth.
I have nothing prepared, but I was so moved by everything I've heard, and I'm one of those people that also only met her in the last 6 years. And I met Russell, became friends with him, and I think I was recording with Lucas for something, and I hadn't even met her yet. And then somehow, maybe we all had lunch or something, and she just became an instant buddy. Like we just, and like all of you, each of you, we had this instant chemistry, this instant, oh yeah, we're gonna get along and we're gonna be lifelong friends. Like I just had that feeling, you know, like we got each other, and I felt seen and heard. And I remember there were just a few things that we did together over the past few years, before and after COVID, and one of them we were supposed to go to see Wicked together, and I remember. I'd said to her, you know, I've never seen it, and she's like, nor have I, let's go, okay, and then she just said, you know, it's, I don't know what happened to Russell, but he doesn't like musical theater, so thank you for being willing to go with me, because he never will. This memory just came to me while I was sitting here, and I just wanted to share and express, like so many of us have already, I have this mixture of, I can't believe that she's not here, and this deep grief, but it's almost overridden by that just disbelief, because she was so powerful, such a life force, that I just know that she's here right now, and she's with us, and she is applauding and laughing and crying and hugging each of us this evening. So that's it.
Thank you.
Like Minoo, I'm an orchestra mom, and I know Sandi and Russell from the orchestra that my two sons went to for years and years and years. And I think probably Sandi was one of the first mentors I had here, being an immigrant and an artist and always doing things that my parents didn't do in a new place, and I was lost. And I mean, I think I first started working with Sandi when she needed help with the orchestra, and I started to take on some phone numbers and call people and tell them about how they need to come to this amazing orchestra, and I was always buying tickets and going and things. But I think, you know, as much as I took my kids here, I feel like for me it was a growth. It was the place where I actually found a community, and I found it family. You know, we would go with Sandi and Eve Cohen to, you know, Orange County to some place, so we would learn about fundraising for the orchestra, or, you know, or I would design some maybe logos and programs and things just because it felt good to do it. But one day Sandi said to me in the orchestra, I would come and stay there when my kids were in the, she said, can you come to my car? I want to show you something. So I went to her car and she opened the trunk and she took out these puppets. And she had brought the puppets and she had brought all these fashion drawings. And she said, look, I was a fashion designer and I was doing these, and unlike you, I'm talented. I'm like, I really felt like I was a loser because I really didn't feel like I was anywhere. And it was like, she was trying to show me all these beautiful things. Oh, and I'm like, you did this? You know, that was a bond that we created there. And you know, she was always such a good listener, and she had so much insight. And I don't have too many spectacular memories or, you know, funny things or anything like this. But I think the relationship I had with Sandi was that, you know, she was running the orchestra, and these parents were really weird, and they would come and do real weird things, and they would want to take over and do stuff. And she just stand there and she's like, nope, nope, no, that's not how you do it. Or even like, you know, if I would say something or I would assume something, even not about the orchestra, just like talking, and she would say, no, that's not what I thought. That's not what I meant this. And, you know, when I was trying to write and remember, I was, you know, everything that you guys said, she was very clear in her head, and she was very strong. and she knew exactly what she wanted and exactly what she didn't want. And at the same time, she was very kind and very, very comfortable with herself. And I really look up to her. You know, she's not here, but you know, you learn from other people's life who give you confidence when you need it, and they're there when you need it. And it doesn't matter if you're a kid or if you're an adult, but I think when someone gives you love and they, you know, they show that they care, it changes your life. And I think a big part of me going back to doing my own creative things beyond what I was doing as a designer is because of Sandi. And thank you.
Thank you.
So I've only known Sandi for about as long as my mom and dad have known Sandi, but I didn't really hang around that long, and I don't know how anybody ever talks for hours. I can only talk for about 10 minutes at a time. But something that struck a chord with me was just the amount of art she made in her lifetime. Life is not guaranteed forever at all, but one thing is guaranteed is just like these trees may seem like they'll be here forever, but they're reaching out and branching out in a million different directions and being just beautiful their whole lives. And I see that she did that. I mean, art is what makes people immortal. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, Gilgamesh looked for immortality, couldn't find it, but eventually he learned to just write his own story, and we're still know about his name today. So, you know, it's foolish to try to live forever, but try to find life forever in the deeds you do. And, you know, I think she'll live forever with all the art she made in her life. And, you know, I'm an artist too, so that inspired me, like, man, I gotta keep making stuff, because she was making stuff until she couldn't make stuff anymore. But, yeah, she's also just so sweet, and, you know, she felt like she's not my grandma, but she had that vibe about her, and just said, so sweet, but I helped walk barley, but, you know, whatever. That's all I have to say. Art makes you immortal, and she's definitely immortal with that way.
Okay, I'm just going to say a few words about the sons. I'm Matt, Amy's husband, Rowan's father. Barley is now living with us, Barley Steinberg. Everything has been said about Sandi. What a spectacular spirit. What a remarkable woman. I, for the last few years, have seen her sons, the support they gave their mama and Dana. My mama is going through cancer treatments now, and I always tell myself I have to be as good as those boys. They were there for their mama, and the thing that hurts the most when we lose those we loved is if we feel regret. I wasn't there. Well, these boys were there, and I hope that gives them peace. There will be no regrets. You were remarkable sons, and she was very proud of you. So, love you. Thank you for bringing us all together today. The Steinberg boys.
Sometimes I draw a blank. Let's see. I also met Sandi at I met Sandi at like a kind of a tough time for me, and you know, I was lacking a little bit in confidence because I just moved here from New York, and I was going through different job interviews, and I wasn't doing very well on the interviews. And Sandi she just saw like something in me that I kind of couldn't see at the time. So, you know, she just made me feel like, you know, like I was really good at things. And so that gave me a lot of confidence, and I think that I got the job that I got now because of her, because she gave me some advice about
acting the part because she said she's had stage fright, and so she's just always giving me advice, and also like the clothing in my closet, because I got rid of a lot of my stuff during the pandemic, and I was like, Sandy, I don't know, how to match things, and she's like, bring it over. So I'd bring my clothing over, and she would show me how to wear stuff. I'm not wearing it now, but and she went shopping with me. We went to the mall together during a heat wave with our masks on, and when the pandemic was a little worse, and it was rough because it was a hot day, and she could shop all day. She had so much energy, and she made me feel like I looked so good in the clothing, and she was a lot of fun to be with. And towards the end, we watched a lot of TV together, and sometimes we do it in her bedroom, just like like have a little. And she wanted to have a sleepover. She's such a funny person, and she wanted to have a sleepover, and we had a lot of plans to do some things. And the other thing is that I'm from New York, so my family's from New York, and they're not very expressive with their words. And when I met Sandy, and she told me she loved me right away, and it was such a nice, it's just such a nice feeling, when you get off the phone, when you're getting off the phone with someone and they tell you they love you, and they're so warm. And so I just, I feel like I'm missing out on a lot of things that we plan for the future. But I'm just so happy that I got a chance to be with her anyway, even though it was a little bit of a difficult time for her in the last couple of years. But I could still see all the things that you guys mentioned in her, just so you know, even though she was suffering. And I think that's all, because it's hard to concentrate. Thank you. A little stage fright.
Dana took Mom to her last movie, which appropriately enough was Barbie. And she loved it, right? She loved it.
Yeah, she loved Barbie.
Yeah.
She told me at the end about, Ruth Handler at the end of the movie.
Yeah, she only told you the story at the end that she knew about Ruth Handler. Yeah, pretty amazing. I just want to say all of you here really are what makes this celebration so meaningful and beautiful to my entire family, and we all feel like family together now. I just want to thank you so much for sharing all of that and being here. And it's not a surprise you're amazing people, because my mom liked you. So I invite you to continue to stay, read her scripts, option her scripts. Have some food, and please sign the guest book and everything. And just beautiful to have you here. So thank you. A big round of applause to all of you.
Like such a great job talking to you. Did a great job talking to you.
Thank you.
I would really appreciate it.
You have to.
We needed like, and they're trying to add Dana.